All right. We are back with Optimist Urbanist, episode, I believe, number four.
Yes.
Yes. So last time we were talking a lot about tourism and what benefits tourism can bring to residents of a major city. And I just wanted to kind of continue our discussion on that with talking about some of our more personal experiences doing tourism all across the U.S. I've traveled largely, or actually only within North America. I've never been to Europe. I don't know about you.
No,
Never Europe.
we'll go though.
Yeah, yeah. At some point, get there. But have you been to Canada?
No.
So you've only been to the U.S.
And Mexico.
and Mexico. Yeah, that's right. What parts of Mexico have you been to?
Well, only northern, the border cities, towns, and maybe down into Mexico a little bit,
Yeah.
but from the Arizona border.
So Nogales,
Yeah.
you've been there.
hmm
What's that like?
Well, I remember we went in, and it was definitely such a different experience or feel from Nogales, Arizona, which felt like a sleepy little desert town. Because
Yeah.
when you cross over the border, um, it really is just the amount of people that are just out and about is just so much more. Whereas Nogales, Arizona, it's kind of just, a quiet town, not a lot of people out and about, or actually nobody really. And
hmm
then you go across the border and it's just, there's people and there's people walking and people, cars everywhere, and
Right.
it's kind of bustling. It was an
Yeah, yeah.
experience.
So from what I know about it, it's like Nogales, Arizona has like 20,000 people, and
Mm,
then Nogales, Sonora, the Mexican state down below us, has like 300,000 people. And
yeah,
so it's like, 10, if not more times bigger
right.
to be there. But would you say that just kind of culturally or design wise that Mexican cities have more acceptance of being outside and walking around than American cities?
Well, Nogales is really dense. I've looked around there, and I've also gone on Google Maps, and I've looked around, and it is very
Yeah,
dense.
I've done my fair share of Google tours on, especially on the border towns and
Right.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you're seeing apartment buildings and businesses and houses just much closer together, and so I think that it really influences it. Whereas Nogales, Arizona, can be dense too, right on the border there, but
hmm
you get a little bit further out, and then you're getting the highway culture, you're getting the big box stores.
Yeah, right.
So,
And part of the reason why I was thinking about this topic is because I know, I believe it was Not Just Bikes, just made a video, and I'm gonna date myself by saying this, but made a video semi recently about sense of place
hmm
and how car culture and car oriented design destroys sense of place because when it's just parking lots and big box stores, everything looks exactly the same, and so there's no sense of place. And it's something that's been really big for me in tourism and in living in cities and in thinking about city planning is this idea because I believe that if you have a sense of place where you live, it increases your overall happiness so much. And if you feel like that you live somewhere that's unique and that has charm versus just, zombieing your way through life and parking in the strip mall and going grocery shopping and coming home and parking your car and you know, just living life that way, just never really leaving your car to do anything.
there's a different orientation to the world, I think, that when you live that kind of life. I've never really done that. Um, haven't had that experience.
Yeah.
I mean, not for the majority of my life. Um, but like I feel like people they just kind of accept it, and if you suggest anything, a different type of life like walking, they freak out. And
Which is so strange.
yeah, I mean, it's really kind of like this idea. I mean, I think it's a combination of people feeling like walking, especially in the suburban areas, walking is for homeless people or
Right.
poor for losers or whoever, poor people, and then like, but also so I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just grasping or making
I
judgment
mean, I
calls on
definitely
people,
think
but
I definitely think that that mentality is there,
Mhm.
right? That walking or cycling is not for people who own cars, and that like if you own a car, like you can't possibly walk or cycle anywhere. Like that it's like all or nothing
Hmm.
for a lot of people. And then the design really dictates that as well. But so, you know, I would say that probably the place that I've been with the least sense of place
Hmm.
would be the far flung parts of the Phoenix area,
Oh,
you
no, that
know,
place is terrible.
Glendale and Peoria and them, and nothing against anyone who lives there or anything or chooses to live there, but I just feel like that every single intersection there, all you are looking at, your only landmarks are what big box store is there and what,
Gas stations.
chain restaurant is there. Like, oh, here's Freddy's Burgers, and then oh, the next one it's Brewster's Ice Cream. Like these
Hmm.
are all franchises. They might be more local to the Southwest, but it's still not anything unique in its design by any means, and it's all very drive-through oriented as well. So it lacks a lot of human interaction, and anyone that you see walking on the sidewalk or using the transit is looking in pretty bad shape
Yeah.
because also in the Phoenix area, of course, the heat
Hmm.
just bears down on people and just really is detrimental. But then we design the streets and have no trees and it's all giant black asphalt. And it's like we really picked the hottest state in the US to design with the most asphalt.
Yeah. So it's very hostile to anybody. So people wouldn't want to be there because it's actually created to, I mean, just the design is hostile. And so people are like, well, I'd be crazy to walk through this
Right,
space. So you kind of can't blame them that why they wouldn't want to walk around,
right.
you know. Whereas if you go to somewhere like downtown or like you said, Roosevelt Row in
Yeah.
Phoenix or Tempe in Mill Avenue
Hmm, hmm.
or downtown Tucson, you're going to have more of um, a tendency to see people walking around. And actually, you know, when it's not incredibly hot,
Right. That was going
and
to be my next point is literally 9 of the 12 months, it's pretty tolerable. And I would say 6 of the 12 months, it's wonderful
wonderful, yeah.
in this state. But then, there's those three that are really tough, like,
Mhm.
June, July, August, but even a lot of May is pretty hot and parts of April too. But September, October, once you get into that, that's what I mean. Like 6 months is really your golden. About half the year you're golden. Some of it you're kind of getting stressed out by the heat, and then the other three it's really bad. But that doesn't. I feel like that is not grounds to design a city to be so car oriented and make everybody so afraid of the outdoors and to have to just huddle into your air conditioned box and drive around everywhere because of 3 really tough months of the year. I mean, you look at the East, I mean, it's just the inverse. It's cold,
Right.
but
Yeah, you're freezing. You're looking at freezing temperatures, bitterly cold. Like I went out walking last winter in January, and it was 11 degrees out,
yeah,
and that's that happens. That's going to be kind of a normal occurrence in the upper Midwest,
yeah,
and it was so bitterly cold, and I was like, well, it hurts.
right.
The
But
wind blowing in my face
it's
hurts.
it's really bad when you get that cold wind. I mean, as
Uh,
someone who lived in the Northeast for 23 years, like,
mhm.
I know it's rough, but then how come cities like New York, Philadelphia, even out in the Midwest more than you get into like Detroit and Minneapolis and stuff, they're still more walkable than cities in Arizona.
Well, they built them back in the olden days.
Yeah, and I know it's because it was old and it was before the car and everything, but like if there's such a demand and such a need to have to drive everywhere, then don't you think we would have demolished everything? But we didn't, you know? So that's the thing is like you don't have to build it that way, but it
Yeah.
is. So anyway, that's kind of an intro to, sense of place is that feeling like there is uniqueness to your city. And sense of place is a really difficult thing to define because you just have to go feel it. You really just have to go feel it. When you're walking around somewhere and you like being there, you have to be in touch with your thoughts and a little bit reflective of and very conscious of when you're traveling. Once you feel that kind of clicking, like that you're enjoying where you are and you're enjoying being where you are and your surroundings, that I think would be classified as sense of place. There are other things that may trigger those similar feelings, but just enjoying your surroundings, I think, is a big thing. Whereas, don't tell me you enjoy the Walmart parking lot because you don't.
Love it.
You certainly don't. So, with that, just wanted to discuss some places where we have felt a good sense of place. So,
Where?
we just any examples that you have? I mean, obviously, we started talking about Nogales a little bit, Nogales, Sonora
Hmm.
versus Nogales, Arizona. Would you think that you had a good feeling being down there? Also, did you feel safe? I know there's kind of like a big stigma against like the border towns of Mexico and everything. Like, did you feel like anything was like looming danger?
I didn't feel that. I mean, honestly, I think that Nogales, Arizona is right down by the border crossing is also an interesting walkable little area too. Just there
Hmm.
isn't anybody around, but I liked it. I think about also another border town I've been to is
I
Naco.
was gonna say, yeah, Naco near Bisbee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
near Bisbee, Arizona. So Naco, on the Arizona side, again, it's a kind of a dead main street. There's a bunch of boarded up buildings, and then when you go across the border, in to Mexico and in Naco, there's a really cute main street that's got a bunch of restaurants and cafes, and it's really quite a destination.
I have heard that that was actually a really nice border town,
Yeah,
and more so on the Mexico side than on the U.S. side. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. The USA isn't really a destination. There's a bar
Yeah.
called the Gay 90s, and I decided to walk in there a couple weeks ago and just see what was like in there. And there was just kind of a little honky tonk with like a big ballroom in the back that was just empty.
On the Mexico side?
No, on the Arizona
On the
side.
Arizona side, yeah. I was gonna
But
say.
yeah, so yeah, I like that. So but also Bisbee is quite a destination town, and I think it's very
Right.
interesting how people are really starved for walkable places that have a sense of place that they go and they crowd to these really small areas like Bisbee, and
Uh-huh.
they buy up the houses and they rent them out as
Yeah.
Airbnbs
Yeah, of
because people
course.
want to go there because they want to go somewhere where they feel connected with each other and with the land and the built environment.
That's a
Right.
huge thing, right? It's like for some reason there's this disconnection where on your vacation it's okay to go somewhere that's super dense and walkable and fun and you want to be there, but then it's somehow totally not okay in some people's minds to live in a place like that. And oh, you have to go live in an area that is just desolate, no sense of place, big box retail, parking lots everywhere, and drive around everywhere.
Yeah.
But when you go on vacation, you go somewhere walkable. I just don't get that. But that does seem to be a mentality that I notice in a lot of kind of this NIMBYist neighborhood defender, perhaps type of culture.
Right.
Um, and I just don't get it. And it's like, it's like you enjoy going to this place. You can live this lifestyle.
Well, I wonder if it's one of those things where people feel like walkability gets in the way of them getting to places fast by car. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that proximity to your workplace or the store is going to create more quick, easy and fast ways to get to where you want to get to,
Yeah.
as opposed to getting in a car and having to drive. And I don't know. I've done a lot of things where I've driven in a car to a place and I've ridden a bike to a place, and the time it takes to ride a bike, especially if you're like in a city with a lot of heavy traffic, uh, is can be comparable, you
Yeah,
know.
totally.
So I don't know. But I think that people are a lot of people. I think just really just kind of don't really dig deep into the experience. I think it takes a certain kind of person who's like, let's do an experiment, as opposed to
Yeah.
somebody who's just going through the motions because they're just like, I just don't want to think about it. I can't. I'm too busy. I have to
Right.
kids. I have a job. I have all these things.
That's what I was kind of getting at with the um, experiencing sense of place and knowing what that feels like is you do have to very consciously travel and understand like and really think about the place that you're at and like why you enjoy it. Because if you're just going through the motions, you're not like these things aren't really going to click,
Right.
But when you're really looking at what makes a place great, eventually you'll come to the conclusion likely that it's because it was like walkable or there was like nice store frontages and everything. I've mentioned before the book Happy City by Charles Montgomery, and what I recall from that is him talking about getting so deep into it, talking about the types of facades and the varying of like geometry in the facades that literally like makes your brain happier, right? And these kind of just generic glass, like one like protrusion out and not like some receded and some coming more forwards, right? Just one setback, right? On the sidewalk,
Uh-huh.
consistently one, like the same setback on the sidewalk from a building and just big glass windows, like, modern architecture kind of stuff compared to older facades that may vary a little more in where they are along a setback, um, is a lot better for your mind when you're walking along. It actually increases your like dopamine or something like that. I don't recall and I don't have the book on me right now, but I do remember him talking about how big, scary, modern architecture buildings can make you feel really like unsafe. Like as unsafe as being in a big open parking lot.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So it's this kind of idea of density is not just the silver bullet. You
Right.
have to do density correctly.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of areas that were built not very, that were built up a lot, but not built up well.
I think like
And
especially modern places that have a level of density. What's an example of a modern? I mean, you think about Phoenix, downtown Phoenix.
hmm
They're building a lot of 5/1s. They're replacing strip malls along the light rail
hmm
tracks with these buildings. The scale is kind of interesting. I'd say it's better than big box stores with big parking lots, frontages, and stuff. But
hmm
it isn't necessarily a comfortable place to be.
right.
Um,
And that's something that you have to go and experience it. You have to go and walk around.
yeah,
Because if you just drive past stuff, you're
mhm,
tunnel visioned. You're just focusing on the road,
yeah,
right? It's a big thing with these kind of suburban parts of Tucson and everything. I get asked like, "Oh, this business over here on this street," and it's like, I don't know. Like
yeah.
I drove past it all the time, but I don't know
You don't
because
know.
you're just focused on the street. So it's really difficult to actually experience an area unless you go walk it
Right? Right.
big time. Because when you're going 40 plus miles an hour somewhere, doesn't really matter what it looks like.
Yeah, you
And
kind of
that's
just
why it
do.
all looks the same.
Yeah. It's
So,
true. When you're in a car, you have the screen between you and you have the insulation, the air conditioning, the
yep,
music and the stereo,
yep,
the the tint of the windows, the box. Yeah, you're looking through the world through basically a screen. And
yeah, basically, right.
I often think about places that are dense but just don't have the greatest vibe or feel, and that would be like say like I always call them financial districts
Oh,
of
yeah,
downtowns.
I know what you mean. Even in Philadelphia,
Um,
there's like there's the really nice like historic area with Reading Terminal Market, the big public market, and all that. All that feels great to walk around. It's very busy, but it's very dense, but it still feels pretty manageable, right? Like
mhm,
you just feel like you're in a nice big city. But then you go a little bit west, I believe, of City Hall, and you get into where like the big Comcast towers are and stuff, and these like giant corporations that basically own the damn city at this point. And you're just walking around these giant financial district kind of buildings,
mhm.
and they make up the skyline and they give it a little bit of character that way, but when you're on the ground and just walking in this like big canyon of glass,
Yeah.
it's pretty terrifying. Just in a way that you feel like you're next to a bunch of monoliths and you don't feel like that you're in an area that is very conducive to people anymore.
No, it's interesting because I think that a lot of people are afraid when you say density that's what you mean. I think people get that idea. But
Of
at the
building
same time,
monoliths,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But also I think some people really like you mentioned, well, what about Fourth Avenue downtown Tucson? They're like, I don't like that. People are like, they don't like that. They really like their cul-de-sac car. They
Right.
really do. I've had people
Yeah.
say that, and what I say to people, because yeah, I've said, well, thing is there should be more neighbors like that. And they're like, well, what if we don't want that? And I'm like, well, it's about freedom of choice, right? I mean, we're building your cul-de-sac, suburban and sprawl neighborhoods. So, but we are forced to.
Right.
It's the zoning laws that do that. I thought, you were all about freedom of choice, especially when you speak with somebody who's conservative, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I thought it's about freedom of choice. Isn't that what it's about?
Right.
But it turns out that a lot of people really aren't interested in freedom of choice. They just use that as um, a talking point, but they
Yeah.
actually really just want to control everything.
Right. If it's about freedom of choice, I shouldn't have to drive to work every day. I
Mhm.
should be able to choose, no matter where I live, to walk, bike, or drive to work if I would
Yeah,
like to.
yeah.
Right? That is true freedom of choice right there. I'm a big believer in that for
Hmm.
sure. But when you have to, and driving is the ultimate like non-freedom to me,
Right.
right? Because driving requires you to have a car, first of all, which
That
is
costs money.
a loan
Hmm.
most of the time, unless you're loaded or you're buying some hunk of junk, right? Or you get something handed down to you, right? Most of the time it's a loan, right? Then it takes gas. So you constantly have to pump money into it, literally pump it in, right?
Insurance,
Insurance and then maintenance,
which is a
right?
lot of money. It's very expensive.
So it's a money pit in and of itself, but then also the act of driving is the least free thing I've ever experienced, I think. As someone who's driven across the country 3 times, right? All the way, right? Driving is one of the least free things ever
Yeah.
because and this is if you're going across the country or if you're going 15 minutes to work. When you are behind the wheel, you cannot do anything
Right.
other than focus on driving.
Right.
And people who don't end up dying,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
It is the least free thing ever. But when you are on the tram or on the subway or whatever you want to call it or on the bus to work and you are taking transit, pull out your phone, check your emails. You'll be fine.
Read a
Read a
book,
book. I know, right? People still
watch a
do that.
movie.
Yeah. You can
So,
do anything. When I worked in downtown Tucson for a little bit and I would take the streetcar to work in Tucson, that was email time.
yeah.
That was time to catch up on emails. At 15 minutes, right there, that was my email time. Had I been driving in,
Yeah.
I'd have had to sit down at my desk and then catch up on emails
Yeah.
in my first 15 minutes of work. But I could be ahead of the game with that, right? And it just gives you a little time. Whereas driving, and then also, like, I don't have to worry about anybody. I don't have to worry about crashing, right? I don't have to look left, right, left at every stop
Mhm.
because the guy driving the streetcar is doing that for me,
Doing it for you.
right? And that's it. So,
I mean, I lived in Portland, Oregon, and I rode my bike or took public transit um, every day
hmm
from I lived in North Portland and would go to PSU
hmm
and
which is Portland State,
Portland State University,
not
not
Penn State.
Penn State. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's different because when you take the bus or the light rail, um, it's such a different experience compared to, say, taking the bus in Las Vegas, where I used to live. I mean, you get to sit on the bus and let the driving to that driver, but Portland, you get on the bus. And when you get off the bus, you're at your destination because it's so dense and compact that when it takes you and then you're at school or
hmm
you're at the place you wanted to go, like downtown, the coffee shop.
Right.
Whereas
And
in
there's a
Las
lot of
Vegas,
stops and everything along the way. Like the stops are
yeah,
spaced out properly, which is a whole probably episode
but
we could
but but
discuss.
yeah, but the city, but the walkable dense city is right there as you're riding the bus through that area.
Yeah.
And whereas in Las Vegas, I'd have to walk out of some cul-de-sac neighborhood and loop around and walk out of my way and backtrack because all the roads are snaking, in the way that they do in
Yeah.
suburbia. And then you go to a bus stop and it's just essentially the back of a wall of a neighborhood on a major 6-lane arterial.
Right.
And there's like a little, just like a pole of
Yeah, your bus stop is a stick.
yeah, it's like a pole or even like that in Tucson, Phoenix. So
Oh yeah, and in the 115-degree heat, people get a
yeah,
stick to go
and
stand at,
yeah, and it's like you're standing on this edge of a highway. You got cars just blasting past, and then the bus doesn't show up half the time. It's like,
or they miss you.
and they miss you.
Yeah, right. Even though you're out in the open,
Yeah,
I feel like sometimes the drivers don't even remember that there's a stop there because the stick is
yeah, it's on a light pole.
is so nonchalant,
Yeah,
and there's probably hardly ever anybody even standing there. They probably don't even
yeah,
recognize that there's a stop there half the time. I don't know though. I mean, I'm not a trained bus driver or anything, but I do know that people get missed at those little stick stops,
yeah. They get
call
missed.
them. But
Or or like in Las Vegas, I've ridden the selection there as a kid, and it was a lot of because the bus only comes once an hour, and
which is a
it
horrible level of service.
yeah,
On a weekday?
I mean, I don't know. It was often sometimes you'd be once an hour, maybe half hour if you're lucky.
Right.
But especially on the more far-flung suburban streets, you would so you yeah if the bus didn't show up, and oftentimes it wouldn't show up, you
Yeah.
know, or be half hour late, and so you've been sitting out for an hour just standing there. This is before I had a smartphone, and
Right.
so it just you
Of
just be there,
course.
just like standing there, looking at the sky, and like,
Yeah, right.
people driving by, hostile. So very hostile, you
Right.
know.
And totally destroys the idea of wanting to visit somewhere or
Yeah.
a concept of sense of place. So to wrap up the episode, we've discussed all these things that make you feel like you want to actually be somewhere, right? And
Hmm.
that transit wise or housing wise or architecture wise, things that make a place feel nice, right? And that was kind of last episode and this episode. So in our last couple of minutes that we have, just list off or just briefly describe, like an interview question here, briefly describe, um, give me like a couple of places that you've been that you feel like you had the best sense of place at.
Well,
And like one aspect of the place that gave that, and then I'll give a few examples too.
all
But I
right.
want to hear from you, other than Nogales, Sonora.
Well, okay. So Portland, Oregon, of course, downtown Pioneer Square, Alberta Street, where I used to live off of. So those places have a sense of place. The streets are narrow. They're just two lanes, one lane each way, and the buildings come up the street, and there's cafes with tables and chairs
Hmm.
and restaurants, and the houses come up to those buildings. So yes, you feel like you're coming upon a street, destination street or a spot.
Right.
Also, um, I think that anywhere in the Bay Area, not anywhere, that's not true.
Definitely not anywhere.
Not anywhere. Berkeley, felt that way. Telegraph Avenue, also just kind of had a similar feel, streetscape.
Right.
So, how about you?
Um, I would obviously I'm always going to be an advocate for Philly,
Of
but
course.
outside of places that I've lived, just places I visited, I mentioned in the first episode of this show, actually, all that time ago, and episode 4, but Vancouver,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely, lovely place. And I mean, you have like this downtown that's dense and walkable and everything, but then you also have right next to downtown this ginormous nature landscape and this ginormous park with Stanley Park.
Wow.
And then for me, with the sports fan base, obviously you feel like you're around something that's important because it's Canada and it's hockey and all that, right? So definitely Vancouver. I would say pretty much any college town that I've been to. Like obviously I've lived in one, but also like Ann Arbor, Michigan had a good feel to it. You know, uh, and then I was also thinking of Cleveland, Ohio, actually. Cleveland has a pretty solid sense of place. And I think anywhere with a big public market has a really good feeling when you're in that area. I believe it was called in Cleveland, it's called Western Market, and it's in like the Ohio City neighborhood in Cleveland. And just that whole area was great. And I remember I have a friend who lives kind of near that area, and we met up there and we went to Ohio City Market and then we went to or the Western Market in Ohio City and then we went and just walked around and there was like a little square kind of little square area with a little live band and this like cute coffee shop that we went into. Just walked around and there was some streets that were, I think there was some like streeteries
Uh-huh.
right? Which is when you take the tables and put them out in the road. So a lot of local breweries, and I know like the craft beer scene has really helped with sense of place and bringing local attention and everything, right? This whole craft beer thing has really taken off a lot, and there was a lot of that in Cleveland. Um, so yeah, I felt a really good sense of place in Cleveland. I was only there for one day, right? One night, and I was like mid travel, like going to other places, but I had a good time there. I've enjoyed Detroit as well, visiting there, but yeah, I would say that Cleveland and Vancouver, outside of places that I've lived, were some of the best feelings of sense of place that I've ever had. And it's like, these cities get these kind of bad raps, especially in the Rust Belt, where it's like, oh, Ohio, like Cleveland, whatever. But it's like, no, it's actually pretty awesome if you go there. Like, you got to really go there and experience it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that. In terms of transit systems that I really enjoyed, I don't know. There's not a lot. Because I'll tell you, another place that I really loved, New Orleans.
Hmm.
Definitely not a fan of the transit system there. The trolleys are like really limited,
Oh.
right? And that's like one thing that's really been, I mean, having been to only like North American cities and stuff, I have not been like, wow, what a well-made transit system. I I mean, I don't know, biased, but like maybe the most easy to understand and accessible is SEPTA. SEPTA is pretty good for North American standards. Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. It's Philly.
Yeah.
But obviously I'm biased, right? But I mean, I don't know. There's not really a transit system that I've like truly, truly loved. I will say that I saw but did not go on the streetcar in El Paso, and it's very cute. But like the streetcar in New Orleans is also really cute. But
Cute.
yeah, like the design's cute, right? Like it looks cute. It's a cute little
Cute.
train, right? But then the level of service is bad in New Orleans. Like I was out waiting at like 11 o'clock at night for it to come, and I'm like in the dark along like these train tracks where there's like big freight trains going by as well.
I know.
And it's just like it just feels really terrifying, and you're just out there in like the dark with nothing around you, just like at the mercy of this train that comes every 30 minutes. And it's like this city is so touristed. Why is the transit not more frequent?
People are drinking a lot of there too, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. There's a lot of riffraff around you, so you're like, oh God, I hope like nothing happens or anything. Nobody
Yeah.
like drunk comes up to me and tries to fight me.
Well, I just think of drinking in transit, it's like a thing where you want to ensure that people are not feeling like you have to drive.
That too, and that could be a whole other episode. But
Hmm.
anyways, yeah, I would say Vancouver and Cleveland were some great sense of places for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, with that we'll wrap it up there, and we'll catch you guys next week. We'll probably talk about maybe safety again. Now that you brought up the whole drinking thing, right, and how to
Hmm.
design your city to not have people be dying everywhere, because it's very possible. But
Yeah.
um, I don't know.
Alrighty.
We'll think of a topic. I don't have a topic on hand. So,
Okay. Fair enough.
anyways, we will see you guys next time.